Hello, Bernie Kratz. It's Larry the Canvas Guy again. I got that name by canvassing for Solar, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, Foster Wright, Bernie, and Foster Campbell. Hello, revolutionaries. It's Larry the Table Guy. I got that name by doing various tabling events. Now I'm working with Our Revolution, the activist group that grew out of the Bernie Sanders campaign. You may have seen my post on the Facebook event page for Millennials March for Revolution New Orleans. To kick off this revolution, we are marching all across this country. And by we, I mean Our Revolution is being joined by Women's March, Pantsuits Nation. Now, many of these marches are combining forces for one huge march on the Capitol and in major cities all across this country. For those of you who cannot attend on the 21st, I invite you to revolt against fascism at the March for Unity rally in Duncan Plaza in front of City Hall on January 20th. Many of us will be attending both marches on January 20th and 21st. To add your voice to the direction of our future and the podcast, please join us at our next Our Revolution meeting Tuesday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Blue House in Central City, 1700 South Rampart. Now watch as I explain to the group the historical reasons why we need a revolution now. Half a century ago, from the late 1930s to the 1970s, there exists in the U.S. the largest middle working class in the history of history before or since. During that time, the top marginal tax rate was 91%. College was free for most people. The median wage was about $40 an hour, and the minimum wage was nearly $15 an hour. But then Buckley versus Vallejo in 1976 turned bribing politicians into free speech. As a result, 4 years later, Reagan was elected. When he then took the top marginal tax rate down to 24%, raised taxes on the working class, busted the unions, and borrowed more money than all the presidents before him combined, in an effort to bankrupt the government so that social programs could be cut. Thus began the war on the working class, liberals, and brown people. Today, even though we are only 5% of the world's population, the United States of America, the land of the free, has 25% of the world's prisoners. Over the last 30 years, we have seen our police become less and less concerned with protecting poor citizens and more militarized and more concerned with protecting and serving wealth. This is the slippery slope towards fascism we are currently on. The term fascism was coined by Mussolini during the rise of the Nazis. He defined it as government in service to corporate power. Based on our recent history, does that seem familiar to you? This slide into fascism is nothing new. Let me read you just a short passage from They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, an author who interviewed common German citizens after World War II. In your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you do, but what do they say? They say, "It's not so bad. You're seeing things. You're an alarmist." And you are an alarmist. You're saying this must lead to this, and you can't prove it. These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? And how do you know, or even surmise the end? On the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the party, intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues poo-poo you as pessimistic or neurotic. You are left with your close friends, who are, naturally, people who have always thought as you have. But the one great shocking occasion when tens or hundreds or thousands will join you never comes. That's the difficulty. If the last and worst act of the whole regime had come immediately after the first and smallest, thousands yes, millions would have been sufficiently shocked. If, for example, the gassing of the Jews in 1943 had come immediately after the German firm stickers on the windows of non-Jewish shops in 1933. But of course, this isn't the way it happens. In between come all of the hundreds of little steps, some of them imperceptible, each of them preparing you not to be shocked by the next. Step C is not so much worse than Step B. And if you did not make a stand at Step B, why should you at Step C? And so on to Step D. Suddenly it all comes down, all at once. You see what you are. You see what you've done. More accurately, you see what you haven't done. For that was all that was required of most of us, that we do nothing. World War II was part of the 4-generation cycle of revolutions against aristocracy in the history of Western civilization ever since the Renaissance. In this country, that would have been the American Revolution. 4 generations later was the Civil War. 4 generations later was the Great Depression and World War II. And 4 generations later is right now. The American Revolution was a revolution against the aristocracy of the British Crown. The Civil War was a revolution against the aristocracy of slave-holding plantation owners in the Deep South. The Great Depression was a revolution against economic royalists. And right now, we are fighting a revolution against American fascism. And that's why this call to action is so urgent. This march and this movement will be historic. By attending these events, you will be able to say that when it really mattered, you were there. You can tell your grandkids that you were on the correct side of history. So why are we marching for revolution? Well, the appointments this administration has made and the plans that have been laid out so far all point in a fascist direction of dividing and conquering the races and religions, criminalizing free speech, criminalizing women's rights, criminalizing certain religions, and ultimately criminalizing the working class. Did you know that in some places in this country, it's actually illegal to be homeless? This time, we will not wait until it's too late. This time, we will confront and oppose this fascist power from the very beginning. We need to know if we are in a brutal dictatorship as soon as possible. The soonest we can test this is the day after Trump takes power, January 21st, 2017. Our revolution will be joined by several groups concerned for our liberty. From Pantsuits Nation, the Women's March on Washington. We are all marching on the same day to show that Trump does not have a mandate. Most people voted against him. The opposition is large, the opposition is organized, the opposition is relentless. Join us. Thank you to all who participated in the 3 marches for Bernie, and to everyone for lending me your ears. Please contribute to this GoFundMe campaign so we can invest in permits and police escorts for a huge crowd. March for Revolution New Orleans alone has over 500 people who have already committed to come, and another 2,000 people who are interested in coming, and we're just one of several groups who each might bring 500 or more people themselves. For the 3rd and final March for Bernie, we raised $800 for 500 people to march 2 miles for 1 hour. This time, let's raise enough funds to cover at least twice that many people for 3 miles, so we can enjoy a safe and comfortable expression of our First Amendment rights while we still have them. Viva la Revolution!